Is this you? You're shooting about 30 plus weddings per year. You're tired and burnt out, but you love what you do. So, in order to not stretch yourself too thin, you've decided that the next best step is to hire an associate photographer. First off, congratulations. This is such an exciting step as a business owner to grow your team. But second, before you go any further, I want to make sure that you have the right clauses in your associate photographer contract so that you're protecting your business at the beginning of the relationship when you hire an associate photographer onto your team. Hi, and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Paige. I am the owner and lead attorney behind The Legal Page. I help small businesses get legally legit without breaking into hives. Today, I want to talk about associates. I recently had someone ask me, Paige, how do I protect myself when I first hire an associate? This person tried hiring someone previously, but they ended up being a bad fit and ultimately ended up stealing a client from them. So I want to protect you from this happening. But before we go any further, I really just want to start with what an associate is and what they do for your business. Associates are usually independent contractors hired by your business to represent your business, but not in an employer-employee relationship. They can also either work alongside of you or in place of you. And for associates, they're a lot different than just hiring a second shooter or an assistant. Associates usually always are trained to a certain extent and after a certain period of time to really fill your shoes at a wedding so that you can be in multiple places at one time. Ultimately, hiring an associate is a great way to dip your toes into the water of growing your team. Instead of hiring them as employees, you're going to hire them as independent contractors, which is a great way to start delegating. And the good news is associates love working for other photographers. And here's why. They get to do what they love most: create art, take photos, be with their clients day of. And they don't have to do all of the back end work of communicating and post-processing and editing and all of the marketing and advertising that comes with owning a business. All they have to do is shoot photographs for you at a wedding, give a good customer experience in person, and then they hand you the memory card and you take it away from there. So now that you know what an associate photographer does, you may be asking yourself, what do I look for in a good associate? Here are some helpful tips as you get started in your search. If you're looking to hire an associate as an independent contractor, then you want to really look for two big key things. First, that they have a lot of established experience, and two, that they actually have their own business. This means that they should have their own business license, insurance, and equipment to shoot weddings or events or sessions for you. Oftentimes, really great associates are ones who want that hands-on experience and supplemental income, but they don't love running their own business. So they ultimately don't really want to scale and grow the business that they have. Oftentimes, this is someone who is just starting out or has at least 6 to 12 months of photography experience, or someone who has maybe been a photographer for a little bit longer than that, but wants steadier clientele. However, it's also very possible that this would be someone who has years and years and years of photography experience, but they no longer want to do all of the grind day to day of running their own business and would rather just shoot for someone again and hand over that memory card. Now comes the burning legal question. Do I need a contract for my associate? Obviously, this is a resounding yes coming from me as an attorney, but I also think it's really, really important to set boundaries and expectations from the beginning of your working relationship with them. So let's get into the main clauses that you need to have in your associate contract. Clause number 1 is a scope of work clause. This is going to go at the very top of your associate photography contract and lays out all of the duties of the associate. In this clause, what usually happens is that you're going to attach to the end of your contract a policies and procedures page. And in the scope of work, you would say something along the lines of the associate agrees to do everything outlined in attachment A. Then in the attachment, you can lay out what their responsibilities are for working for your business. Essentially, what this is going to include is pre-shoot procedures, so pre-event procedures, any type of communication that they need to have with the client, or with you as the business owner, what happens day of, and all of the tasks that they need to accomplish day of, and particular shots that they need to get, say, to conform to your business style and business editing. And then 3, what they need to do after, if they do have to do a little bit of culling for your business, or if it really is as simple as handing that memory card over and you take it from there in totality. Ultimately, what you want to do here is have a very clear understanding of what is expected of your associate and what is expected of you as the business hiring them. Clause number 2 is an associate compensation clause, and this is going to go one of 2 ways. Across the industry, there are really only 2 ways to pay an associate. First is a base retainer. You always want to pay your associate a base retainer for them crossing out that date on their calendar whereby they agree to honor a commitment to shoot for your company. This would happen immediately when the client books an associate wedding under your company. And then after you pay that base retainer, you can either 1, pay them a set amount, whether that's just a set flat fee or a set hourly fee that they work for as many hours as they have day of shooting the wedding for you, or you can do a commission-based approach. And here, what you would do is the associate would make a percentage of the total net price of the package that the clients booked through your company. This means the total amount that your clients paid your company for the package that they booked through you, less any fees and expenses incurred, and also less that base retainer that you originally had already paid the associate. In my opinion, there's really no right answer here. Some associates just love it, cut and dry, an hourly rate, and then some associates really like commission-based pay because sometimes they do have something to do with a client coming to you and your company and deciding to work with that particular associate. And then if they book a higher package, then they ultimately make more money from you in the long run on a commission-based pay. Clause number 3 that you should have is a working relationship clause. And this is incredibly important when you are hiring the associate as an independent contractor. Really, what this clause says is very simple, that there is no employer-employee relationship, no taxes will be taken out of the associate's pay because they are an independent contractor, and that if they are paid over $600 from your company by the end of the tax year, that you will send them what's called a 1099 NEC form if applicable. Sometimes it's not applicable because as of January 1st, 2022, if you're paying them via some online third-party payment processor, that third-party payment processor such as PayPal or Stripe or Square or Venmo Business will be required to send them a 1099-K form, so you don't really have to send them anything. And again, all of this should be laid out in your working relationship clause. But if you are not hiring your associate as an independent contractor and instead are hiring them as an employee for your business, you would not need this type of clause. In the scope of work clause at the top of your contract, you would really lay out what they do for you as an employee for your business instead. The 4th clause is a non-disparagement clause. This is really one of those non-negotiable clauses that absolutely need to be in an associate contract, and here's why. A non-disparagement clause prevents independent contractors from speaking ill of your company during the term of their contract with you and after they leave. This is important because in business-to-business relationships, remember, if you're hiring them as an independent contractor, this clause is really important because ultimately things may not work out or you may not just really gel with one another. And you don't want that contractor then going off and spreading rumors or bad things about you either online to your clients or to prospective clients. This clause protects you from something like that happening and ultimately means that if the associate did that, it would constitute a breach of contract. Clause number 5 is a confidentiality clause. Now, you can either have a confidentiality clause in your associate contract or you can have it as an additional non-disclosure agreement, but they really are the same things legally. So I just suggest for simplicity purposes that you put a confidentiality clause in your associate contract. This is critical because you don't want your associates stealing your secret sauce. Because your associates are going to work really closely with you and in your business, they're going to know things about your business, such as the way you book clients, your inquiry strategy and your booking strategy, your prices, how you make sure that there are returning customers in your business. Of course, your workflows and SOPs, your editing style, all of those things are your secret sauce. And you want to ensure that your associate keeps those confidential and they don't either use it for their own gain later down the road for their own business, and they absolutely don't disclose it to third parties. And clause number 6 is a non-solicitation clause or a non-compete clause. So a non-solicitation clause goes in an independent contractor agreement if you're hiring an associate that way. If you are not hiring them on as an employee, you absolutely cannot have a non-compete clause in your independent contractor agreement for your associate. And let me tell you why. Because they are an independent contractor. You can't disallow them from competing with you. That's literally what they should be doing. They're independent from your business. They are only there to work for you for certain periods of time and for events or weddings that they only agree to work for your business on. It's literally in the title of who they are as an independent contractor. They need to be completely independent from your business. So you can't disallow them from competing from you. They absolutely can compete with your business. But they are just obligated in saying yes to crossing out a date on their calendar to work for you or a time period on their calendar to work for you. But if they're truly independent contractors, they can run their own business, they can take on their own clients, and they can most definitely compete in the same industry that you're in. Ultimately, due to lack of control that you have with hiring on a contractor, they can absolutely go find work outside of your company. So if they are an independent contractor, then you instead want them to have a non-solicitation clause in your contract. And ultimately, what this clause is going to do is disallow them from soliciting your current clients. Thus, they can't go around at a wedding giving out their own business card and trying to solicit all of the clients that you would ultimately have available to you if you were the one being present in person shooting that wedding. This is really important and relates back to what I talked about at the beginning of this episode when someone said, "Hey Paige, I had an associate, a bad experience, and they stole a client from me." And what that means is that instead of those spouses at a wedding being returning clients for your company, they ultimately connected better with the associate who was with them day of in person shooting their wedding, and then reached out to them later down the road for, say, their first anniversary session and booked the photographer and their business, which was not through your business whatsoever. Here, under a non-solicitation clause, this would only be okay by mutual agreement of the parties. But if you have a non-solicitation clause, then that associate absolutely has to ask you for permission to do that. All because they were your clients first. On the flip side is if you hire the associate as an employee, then you absolutely can and should have them sign a non-compete. The main things about non-competes, though, is they have to be very restrictive, which means they have to be regionalized. So usually it's within a 15 to 30 mile radius max that they could compete in the same industry as you. And it only has to be for a certain period of time, usually not to exceed 2 years. But here I'm just going to stop and say that your state laws govern non-competes. Some states really like to enforce non-competes, and some states have case precedent that say really non-competes are a no-go, and we have the right to work in the United States, so you really can't implement those. Thus, reach out to an attorney or do your own research here to determine whether a non-compete clause in your employment agreement is going to be valid. And finally, clause number 7 is a term and termination clause. This is important because your associates and you really only want to be bound to working together for a certain period of time. Usually the term stated in the contract is about 1 year, but it can be anything less than that as well. Also, remember, if you're hiring them as an independent contractor, they're independent. So either party could terminate at any time under a contractor and employer relationship. But you want to have some type of notice provision and additional information in your clause here about what happens when termination occurs. My best suggestion is to ensure that one party would notify the other party within at least 2 weeks, if not a month period before, and that they are still obligated to perform all duties that they agreed to until the termination date actually happens. And also here, you want to protect your independent contractor and associate that you're hiring and state that you as the company will pay them for all of the performance that they do under your contract until that termination date. Hiring an associate photographer gives you the opportunity to grow and scale your business beyond what it is right now. But I want you to ensure that you have all of these key clauses in your associate contract that I talked about today in this video. And while you're looking over your associate contract, I also want you to look over your main client wedding contract as well to ensure all of your bases are covered there too. I'll link to the video right here where I go over the essential clauses that you need in your main client wedding contract. So I'll see you over there in that video.